Scorpio.
Dum-da-da-dum.
Leonardo DiCaprio, Bill Gates, Julia Roberts, Ryan Gosling, Katy Perry. Tell us about Scorpio.
Sex appeal.
Wow.
Look at all of them. I don't know about Bill Gates, but,
Bill, no.
but he's got a lot of money, so that's really sexy
He
to a lot of
has
people.
had a sexual appetite considering the amount of times he went to Epstein's Island.
All right, so there's one side of Scorpio that we should just put out right on the top. Well, first, let me say water and fixed, ruled by the planet Pluto. The sex appeal it's a power. It's an energy. It's a force. It comes from attraction and desire. They are also, in their intensity, able to tolerate extremes. And so Scorpio's lives are often the lives that, the best novels are written after because, they have their ups, their heights, and then they have their depths. And so they experience the most array of life.
Interesting.
In all of its light and mostly dark side.
Welcome back to the Medicin Podcast. My name is Mimi and I have my love Chase next to me here. This is episode 3, part 3 of a 4-part astrology series with our good friend and mentor and astrology professional, Adrienne Abeyta. She's been on our podcast 6, 7, 8 times now. And this is a very special series. If you have not listened to the first 2 episodes, we highly encourage you to go back 2 episodes, listen there first. It provides context and foundation for what we talk about in this episode and the following. Just don't want you to miss anything in this juicy series.
Today we are finishing the next 6 signs of the Zodiac, rounding out the 12 total signs. And today is about September 23rd through March 20th. So if you are born within that time frame, or you likely know someone within that time frame, this will be fascinating for you. Learn a little bit more about yourself and learn more about others and these critical relationships that we have. This type of information will benefit you in the most practical way possible, despite the fact that this is astrology. It has been profound for my life, both spiritually with my own relationship to myself and a higher power and a higher purpose, but very practically in my professional life, in my friendships, in my family relationships.
Yeah,
totally.
Absolutely. If you are in a relationship or wanting to squeeze the most juice out of your relationship, I would highly suggest that you understand your partner's natal chart top to bottom, at least the foundation of it, at least the basics. And Adrienne helps us do that for each other. So I think you're really going to enjoy this series. And if you do, please share it on your story on Instagram or send it to someone you love. We appreciate that so much. It helps grow our show and get this information into more ears, of course. You can find me on Instagram at Mimi_the Medicin, and the Medicin Podcast is at _Medicin.
You can look up my name on Instagram, Chase Ramey. That's easier than using my handle, but you can try at the _Chasen_1. And we're in Greece right now. So if you want to see us, likely at this point, 3 weeks in, very tan, looking beautifully relaxed, we'll be sharing our journey and our trip while we are in Greece and sending everybody a ton of love. Without further ado, enjoy episode 3 of our astrology series.
Cheers. We are back. We are rounding, second, coming into the latter half of the Zodiac, starting with Libra. So this is September 23rd through October 22nd. And again, we have the 5 most famous examples of Libra. We have Will Smith, Gwen Stefani, Hugh Jackman, Serena Williams, and Zac Efron.
What an accomplishment, by the way. If you end up on ChatGPT's, top 5 most
seriously.
famous. Well done, everybody we've named thus far.
Yeah. Seriously. So tell us about Libra.
All right, Libra. I love my Libras. Libra's an air sign, and it's a cardinal sign. So anytime we see a cardinal sign, we know that it's the beginning of the season. So here we are again at the next equinox. Here where we are, this is the vernal equinox. And this then begins this next chapter of, let's say, the soul's journey, if we're moving through those 12 houses again. And now what I want to do is I want to begin to bring in that the axis is. So what I mean by that is that each sign has a particular opposite. So if we think about the spokes, the 12 spokes of this house system, there are 2 on each side, right? So each sign has its opposite. It has its mirror. So when we start with Libra here, we're saying that we're starting with Aries opposite, its twin. So moving forward, what I want to do when we're going to talk about Libra, but we'll just kind of throw in there its pair as well so that we can understand everything in terms of relationships.
So would this be complementary opposite or
Yes.
or like polar opposite where
Yes.
they might, okay, so it's both. It's
Yes.
just
Great.
okay. It could be either and.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? And so again, like we're experiencing ourself experiencing reality. So let that sink in for a second, right? The experience of reality has to go through our own experience, which means that everything is in the relational field and everything has its opposite, its complementary opposite, its polarity. And astrology, we just said, right? This is the microcosm of the macrocosm. So similarly, whatever sign we are, there's a part of us, a shadow, a twin, that is also not accessible to us, just like the sun and the moon. And so the other sign, our opposite, holds, we could say the medicine, it holds the key, it holds the reflection, it holds something that its other part needs. Think about the yin and the yang. They work together, right? So they are a part of one another. Yet they are going to express things that manifest or appear to be opposites. Okay.
So depending on if one or both are in or out of balance, it could trigger something in the other that is in or out of balance.
Yes. If one is out of balance, it's likely that they're taking on the characteristics of their opposite sign. So let's start. So for example, we talked about Aries. So the opposite of Aries is now Libra. Aries was ruled by Mars and Libra is ruled by Venus. Remember we talked about that relationship in the first episode as well? And so Libra is a cardinal air sign ruled by Venus. And remember we had Taurus that was also ruled by Venus. However, it was an earth sign. So here we get to meet the expression of beauty in the ideal. Right? Because in the mind space, this is idealistic. This is where beauty and aesthetics is in the mind, you know? And so Libra is this expression of that beauty of truth, of honesty, and of balance, of decorum. Libras are very much about others, right? So here in a very simple form, Aries is I am, and here is Libra, I relate. Aries is this sense of self, where Libra is the archetype of relationships. It's the archetype of reflection. And so again, all these 12 embodied experiences represent, let's say, 12 initiations that we're going through in our own human experience. And so if we are predominantly Aries, then we need to learn the decorum, we need to learn the compromise, we need to learn the relational qualities that are innate in Libra, which is our opposite. Does that make sense? So we're constantly experiencing the axis, the duality, the polarity, whatever we want to say, but the otherness of ourself so that we become whole. Okay?
Yes. Okay. So
with Libra, let's go. We know that Aries is assertive. So Libra is diplomatic.
I was going to say that exact word.
We could take many of the qualities of Aries and flip it on its side, and then we could see this Libra quality. So where Aries is a leader, Libra is a supporter and sometimes a follower. Libras are known to be people pleasers, and that's a really big quality trait that is tied up in Libra. But Libras are like the quintessential hostess, the hostess with the mostess, because they are so attuned and attentive to how other people are feeling and thinking. They are very attuned to their environment and whether or not it is graceful and harmonious and beautiful. Now, this doesn't mean, though, however, that every Libra you meet is going to be some diplomatic doormat. In fact, they might actually be incredibly argumentative and insecure about no one taking them serious, right? So there is the fear of Aries, right? That's the confidence and the independence manifesting through the lens of Libra, which is innately relational. So Libras can
Interesting.
get very lost in relationships. They are relationships. They need relationships. So everybody that is coming in, to talk about their relationship, because that's the number one thing that people are interested in. They're not all Libras, but they're all experiencing the Libra quality of life.
Interesting.
All right.
Yeah. So when we speak about strengths and weaknesses or light and shadow, how would that look for a Libra?
Libras are incredibly supportive. They're reflective. They're an air sign, so they are also analytical. They want to see both sides of things. They don't draw a strong point. They don't have a strong point of view. They're able to see both sides. So they're like Switzerland. They are mediators. They are peace loving. They are consummate therapists because they are so interested in other people's experience. And like air signs, they can relate. This is the most important piece of Libra, is that they're relatable. They can relate to any experience. Some of the shadowy qualities or the unhealthy qualities of Libra are that they are people pleasers. They are more concerned with validation. They just want to be liked. They want to be popular at the expense of really being known. And so they have a tendency sometimes to sustain superficial relationships simply to appease their need to relate. There might not be depth. That's not, and so Libras get accused, like Geminis, of being a little bit shallow, right? That they flirt, they make these connections, but they don't go deep.
Yeah.
And again, I think we've talked about this on another podcast. I think that we have over glamorized the idea of going deep at the expense of just having social strategies, knowing how to relate in social situations, right? And so that small talk or the shallowness, that's Libra's like superpower. Yeah. They can walk into any situation and like relate. And that's such an important strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
In this little cup, I have my favorite way to enjoy mushy love, which is in combination with cold milk. We drink raw cow's milk, and I put it about 8 ounces of milk in with about a scoop and a half of mushy love. That combination, like the cold version of mushy love, tastes like liquid graham crackers. Like, I shit you not. And if you don't know yet what mushy love is, it's our mushroom elixir with 500 milligrams of chaga, which is amazing for gut support. They call it the king of mushrooms. And then 500 milligrams as well of tremella mushroom, which is the beauty mushroom. And she is most known for holding 500 times her weight in water. The more hydrated we are, the more plump and dewy and fresh and young our skin looks.
Plump and dewy.
For Mushy Love, go to getmushylove.com and you can use the code MEDICIN for a nice little discount that we only give to our Medicin Podcast listeners.
What's coming up for me as I think about Libra relationships, could this be the person who, let's say it's a social environment or even a work setting, and they are interacting with another, and the other is maybe making some assumptions based on the Libra's ability to almost like lubricate the social environment, that other person is like, man, they're really jiving with what I have to say. I'm making assumptions that this Libra is going to do the following for me, with me, about me.
Would probably be great on a first date.
Yeah.
But those assumptions could be potentially erroneous if the Libra is only just socially lubricating to make sure that direct interface of having a conversation with someone seems smooth. But they might sign up for things that they weren't really intending to sign up for because the other party is making some assumptions based on the way that they sort of socially engage. Does that make sense?
I think like you're saying that Libras may they may overextend themselves and make the other person think that they are more friendly or interested than they actually are. Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it, especially because Libras, again, so this is Venus. They're beautiful. There's something about Libra that they are beauty. There needs to be, and that's pleasing, and those are those social skills. And so they can't help but make another person feel good. Right. And so that's who they are. I love to have Libras around me because, not only are they beautiful, but they make people feel good about themselves. Right. Because they seek that kind of appreciation and validation, and they offer it out equally as well.
I having a Libra moon, and with my Leoness is interesting because sometimes I think that I'm a little overwhelming in the love that I pour onto people, or like compliments or whatever. And it's my way of disarming myself so that the person in front of me, like often I'll do this with podcast guests where I just like pour out how much I respect, how much I admire, how important their work is or whatever. And sometimes the people are like, yeah, cool, thanks. Like, and I'm like, I just want to tell you all the things, and I do this with friends and everything. And I think it is the Libra in me that's like, and the Leo that's, just like wants to pour love and make the person feel as comfortable as possible with me as I can.
And there are some that are like, oh man, I can't handle this. And there are others like my dad who's like, you're right. I'm like, you are actually correct. And thank you. I appreciate it.
I will receive that.
Yeah.
But it's like, I feel no hesitation in expressing how much I love someone or how much I respect or whatever. I have zero hindrances to that.
And that's, what's really beautiful about Libra too, because it is that Venus is they love to love. And so Libras get caught up in love and romance. And because it's ideal, right? It's an air sign. They may spend a lot of their life, reading books on romance and having really challenging relationships because they don't know how to retain their own autonomy, right? Opposite Aries in a relationship.
Got it.
So Libras are a great bridge.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Anything else we missed on Libras? Underrated or
misunderstood?
Overrated, misunderstood?
That they don't have a backbone, and that they're always just compliant, and they can be quite argumentative as well.
Okay.
So Libras are not always harmonious. I mean, they like to cause, because they like to argue. They like to see both sides, so they can poke a little bit as well.
Is fairness a quality?
Thank you very much. Thank you. As we're looking at that, is very much a quality and equity and fairness. But again, it comes from this place of balance. And remember that all of that is relative. Who's to say what is really balanced? And so Libras spend much of their life in a constant process. Remember, it's the process of becoming, trying to find and create that balance within.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, moving on to Scorpio. What a cool name. This is October 23rd through November 21st. This includes the Leonardo DiCaprio, Bill Gates, which can be a polarizing figure, Julia Roberts, Ryan Gosling, and Katy Perry. Tell us about Scorpio.
Sex appeal.
Wow.
Look at all of them. I don't know about Bill Gates, but,
no.
but he's got a lot of money, so that's really sexy to a lot of people.
He has had a sexual appetite considering the amount of times he went to Epstein's Island and some of the bullshit that came out from his years with Microsoft employees.
Leonardo DiCaprio, Julia Roberts, Ryan Gosling, Katy Perry, all very sexy people.
All right. So there's one side of Scorpio that we should just put out right on the top. Well, first, let me say water and fixed, ruled by the planet Pluto. But I think that was a great invitation to Scorpio, because here we have the sex appeal. And the sex appeal is think about that. It's a power. It's an energy. It's a force. It comes from attraction and desire. But equally, what we have, and which is why it makes, Scorpios even that much more mysterious, is that, what did you just say about Bill Gates?
Well, he is one of the most frequent guests of Epstein Island.
And Epstein Island is
the notorious.
That's all you had to say.
Yeah.
So we have this whole element, the dark side of Scorpio as well, in which they are either involved voluntarily or find themselves in these notorious, seedy, dark situations.
Interesting.
We have to, if we have something that encapsulates all of the challenging parts of our life, or the darker parts, the taboos, the loss of power, fear, Scorpio embodies that. And so for them, they are intense. They are the most intense. Now their opposite is Taurus. Remember what we talked about with Taurus as being stable and grounded and rooted and stubborn. So now just turn that around a little bit and add an emotional energy to it. So Scorpios are incredibly emotionally protective. They are also in their intensity able to tolerate extremes. And so Scorpios' lives are often the lives that, the best novels are written after because, they have their ups, their heights, and then they have their depths. And so they experience the most array of life.
Interesting.
In all of its light and mostly dark sides. Now, let me also paint that not so much as the dark side of they're going to, end up being a drug addict and die.
Right.
The dark side is also most, this is Adrienne's statistic, by the way, just I want to note that. Most surgeons and people that work in really intense environments that many of us couldn't stomach are Scorpios, right? So think about people working at the mortuary and what they're doing. Think about surgeons that are cutting with a scalpel into, I can't even go there, right? Think about dental surgeons, all the people that are involved in these ways of life that other people couldn't stomach.
Wow.
Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting.
My mother's a Scorpio. She grew up in a very traumatic household, abusive household, and has just, thrived in life, considering the circumstances. And that's the tolerance for extremes and the intensity definitely stand out as you explain the Scorpio there.
Right. And that's beautiful because the emblem of a Scorpio is the Phoenix rising, and the Phoenix rises from its own ashes. And so usually with Scorpios, they have had a childhood with similar experiences, trauma. And from that trauma, some of them implode. So Scorpio and Pluto are also associated with death, and death is a part of our life, every day part of our life. We are constantly dying to ourselves to be reborn again. And so the instinct to blow ourselves up, the instinct to self-destruction, the instinct to experience the extreme is bottled up in Scorpio as well. And so for Scorpios that have gone through these intense conditions and it creates this pressure, they either, implode by self-destruction, no one's ever going to kill me but me kind of thing, or they rise from the ashes and do things that others look up to them like, that this is resilience, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I would definitely describe your mom as resilient.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Resilience is definitely resonant for her.
So intense, emotional, they love hard, they're protective, opposite of Taurus, they're possessive, but now we add the emotional element. They can be jealous, they can be insecure, they embody all of those deep emotions.
That's the word I was thinking of, is deep or layered.
Yes.
Maybe
Complex.
hard to figure out.
Yeah. Leonardo DiCaprio, they're mysterious and incognito, and they don't want to show you themselves, because to risk exposure, to show you themselves, then their vulnerability and their weakness. And think about what a Scorpio is. When it feels backed into a corner, it stings.
Right.
And because Scorpios have the eyesight to see everybody's dark side and weakness, it's difficult for them to trust because they know what they are capable of in those dark thoughts. And so they believe that they know what others are capable of as well.
Is there a level of protecting the privacy of oneself?
Absolutely.
Because I'm looking at what I know of Leonardo DiCaprio, he's not an overly public person despite his massive celebrity.
He's never even been married. He, dates these 25-year-old girls, beautiful little models, and then kind of ditches them on their 26th birthday.
Or even my mom, she's always I'm pretty sure she can't quite understand why we would want to talk about our life publicly on this podcast.
Yeah.
And it's just and she's beautifully supportive. She's probably not listening to this, but she's supportive. But I think, deep down, she's like, why are they wanting to disclose, personal, intimate things about their life with the world?
Right. And that, there's a protection of power here too, right? If somebody knows me, they have power over me.
Yeah.
And I mean, in many cultures, especially, in some of the magical cultures, you never told somebody your name because it gave them power over you. And so Scorpio equally so.
We haven't really talked about this specifically with, how does this each one of these signs show up as, if this is your moon sign, we're talking generally about like, okay, if you're a Scorpio sun or Libra sun or whatever, but this seems like a chaotic place for the moon to be.
Chaotic how?
Or
No.
I don't know. It seems, no, it's not.
Go the opposite way. What did we just say that Scorpio is most concerned with?
Most concerned with, well, they're very emotional, right? Like deep emotion. Okay. Yeah. And the moon is the emotional world. Okay.
Yes. So when the moon is in the sign of Scorpio, for that person, some of these characteristics and traits that we're talking about are even stronger, right? That need for protection, emotional protection is safety. Whereas the sun may be embodied in its power, right? Because this is Scorpio, may embody it in its confidence. And so it doesn't require the same kind of privacy.
Interesting. Okay.
You mentioned the Phoenix, so transformation. Would that be an attribute or something important for the Scorpio?
Yes, absolutely. And where that comes from is its ruling planet Pluto. Pluto is the force of transformation for the soul. I mean, it's a transpersonal planet. We talked about that. So the nighttime ruler of Scorpio is Mars. And so Mars and Pluto, what they have in common in that way is it is about protection, but it's also about growth, evolution, and transformation. Right. So yes, Scorpios undergo the most changes in life.
Got it. Something my mom is incredible at is like she's always had plasticity. Even if it's a knockdown drag out, she will still be open to changing herself or her opinions or perspectives, even if it is kind of a knockdown drag out in the process.
And see, that does not sound like Scorpio.
Oh.
No, Scorpio is very attached to what they believe, because when what you believe is a conviction and it comes from how you feel, if you change that belief, then it threatens your feeling of safety.
See, that's exactly how I would explain your mom. I always say his mom is a woman of principle.
For sure.
There you go.
For sure.
These principles are immovable.
Yes.
But I've been blown away by her ability to adjust.
To open her mind, but it takes a very long time.
Opposite of Taurus.
Yeah.
It takes a very long time.
Yeah.
But she might be open to hearing what you have to say about it, but her stance or her principle probably will not change, even if she is open to hearing what you have to say about it.
And I think just to add to that, because it's a good working example, is she is more protective of the relationship. So she will give the impression that she is compromising. Because the relationship is what matters most. But deep down inside, and this is what's interesting too about, Scorpios are actually, and all the water signs are very pious. There's a religiosity in there. And so take, for example, somebody is very convicted that their religion is the truth and it's their safety and it's their life. They may acquiesce to other people's points of view, but deep down inside, they know the truth.
Sure.
And sorry for all of you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, there's some resonating points there.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything about Scorpio? I mean, it seems like what a common misconception would be that like this sign sucks.
Yes, that thing. I was about to say there's so many misconceptions about Scorpio that are really unfair, and it makes, Scorpios when they feel ashamed.
Yeah.
And guess what sign would carry shame? Scorpios. It's like you can't get away from it, right?
Yeah.
But the misconception is that they're evil, that they're liars and they're cheaters and the thing is that they the Scorpio embodies it is the shadow. And so they can't get away from that. But all of us that aren't Scorpios, are projecting our shadow onto the Scorpio, who now is, the sacrificial goat in this, and they get to be the evil one, and the rest of us get to be divine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, they are a necessary kind of evil. Thank you so much, Scorpios, for holding this for the rest of us.
Thanks, Scorpios.
Honestly, thank you, Scorpios. If you know a Scorpio, thank them.
Yeah, seriously. Well, thank your mom.
Thanks, Mom. Love you. All right, moving on to, this is the 9th sign, if you will. We are talking about Sagittarius. This is November 22nd through December 21st, if you know of somebody in that time frame. If not, you've got Brad Pitt, the beautiful Brad. Taylor Swift, who could not be any more relevant than she is now. Walt Disney, Steven Spielberg, my girl Nicki Minaj. Sagittarius.
What do they all have in common?
They are superstars.
Okay.
I would say
Superstars for.
They are all archetypes themselves. You know, Brad Pitt is an archetype. Taylor Swift is an archetype.
Of what, though? Of what?
the adventurer, the explorer. That's what I think of when I think of Sagittarius.
Interesting. Oh, yeah. Okay. See, I don't
What
know
else?
anything about Sagittarius. So
Well, they're all in their own way outspoken,
sure.
outdone. Like
Yeah.
there's something big about them. You said superstar. That was really great.
Yeah.
So they're Sagittarius are a mutable sign of fire, and they are ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is the biggest planet in the solar system. It shines the brightest. So here, Jupiter and Sagittarius, they shine the brightest, right? So there is something very big about them. Might even be big in stature a lot of times as well.
Interesting.
But Sagittarius, oh, I love them. This is my favorite. They are the adventure. And when you start to, again, like we did with Aries, what does that mean? Like, what kind of spirit does the adventurer have?
Curious,
Yeah.
very curious, courageous.
Excuse me one moment. Let's just draw in its pair. So its pair is Gemini. That
Oh, okay.
we need to mention
Yeah.
that. Curious. Go ahead.
Yeah, curious. I would say it takes courage to be an explorer, but they probably wouldn't view it as courageous.
Very good. What would
Other
it be?
people would see them as courageous, but they would be like, "This is just who I am. This is just how I have to be. I have to experience. I have to witness a bunch of different situations and experiences."
Well, I mean, I'm looking at some of the names here: Walt Disney, Steven Spielberg, Taylor Swift, and the visionary component.
Very good.
Great.
Say more.
Their ability to, without copying, pioneer originality, and see potential where others may not have ever seen potential.
Okay, I'm going to slightly correct you just so
Great.
that, no, just so we
Please.
stay within using the correct language.
Great.
So let's not say that they necessarily pioneer, because that's cardinal. They're mutable. So what they do instead is they change things. They adapt them. They refine them. They make them better. They breathe new life into them.
Oh, that's
so
good.
now reconsider all of those artists
Yeah.
and see how they took what was and not only turned it into their own, but they made it more
Yeah.
imaginative and bigger.
Yeah,
Taylor
yeah,
Swift
yeah.
has redefined pop star. Walt
And country star.
Right.
Yeah.
Walt Disney has obviously,
He created created worlds of
Imagination.
animation.
but he didn't create animation as much as he took it into another stratosphere.
Right.
And same with Steven Spielberg. He took filmmaking into this sort of like immersive experience for the viewer, having chauffeured these types of
there-
entertainment.
Stop there. Perfect.
Great.
Perfect.
Okay.
So that last sentence that you just said, he created an immersive experience in which what?
No one else had done.
Right. Or took it to this next level
Yeah.
through this immersive experience. So the difference between Sagittarius, which is a fire sign, and Gemini, which is an air sign, Gemini and that curiosity, it wants to read about it. It wants to talk about it. It wants to go from flower to flower. But Sagittarius wants to get in the middle of it.
Yeah.
It wants to bleed because it just experienced that. It wants to fall in love. It wants to experience, it wants to immerse itself in something so that it becomes it.
Cool.
So this is the great adventure of life, and Sagittarius is daring, but it's almost in a naive, folly way. They don't even know. Oh my God, you're going to walk off the cliff? Oh, I didn't even see that there was the edge of the cliff.
Right.
In their spirit of adventure, they're always looking for the possibilities and what lies on the horizon. And if this can be done this way, then it can be done even better this way. So they're always adding to experiences. And the quest for experience is also the quest for knowledge and for truth, for understanding. So Sagittarians are free spirits. They seek meaning. They need to make meaning of their experience. Otherwise, what's the point? Right? So you have this fiery, dynamic energy that's seeking to grow and expand itself through as many in-person experiences as possible. So this is the traveler.
Sure.
This is the philosopher. This is the teacher. This is the adventure. And what they all have in common as well is that they never stop growing and learning.
That's awesome. It makes me think like It seems like everyone needs to have a Sagittarius friend, you know?
My favorite thing about Sagittarius friends, and I'm one of them, is that spontaneity. They are so spontaneous. You could call a Sagittarius, what are you doing? Nothing. You want to go to Rome? Yeah. Yeah, sure. When? I don't know, like Thursday. They've got good flights. Good flights? Really? All right, I'll pack bam. And what happens, like Sagittarians are often accused of being lucky. That will be one of my misnomers, but people will argue with me. It's not necessarily that they're lucky as though something happens to them. Sagittarius is a sign of belief. They believe anything is possible.
Sure.
And since they believe they're going to win the lottery, I think this is my statistic. I think probably Sagittarians win the lottery more than most people.
Or it seems
Powerful
like
manifestation.
maybe not lottery, but other experiences or other opportunities. They might, because they say yes more
Openly,
than maybe a Taurus or Capricorn or something. If you're saying yes to more experiences, you're going to have more opportunities for good and bad things to happen in your life. But maybe the good is kind of what stands out.
Right. And you want to say something and then I'll go.
Well, it's all clicking. And these examples are actually really good for Sagittarius because, from what I know about Taylor Swift, she has always, despite criticism, sort of stepped into lanes that were seemingly, not good calls for her professionally. Or Walt Disney. Who could have ever thought that you'd be able to make motion picture animated films that would surpass the success of anything done prior to that with, human actors? And Steven Spielberg, again, like totally transcending the way that film is experienced into what likely would have been highly criticized, prior to him changing the entire industry at large. And so I can't help but think like these people, it's almost like an insatiable call that regardless of criticism, they have no other choice.
So good. Insatiable call.
Yeah.
That's how they live their life. It's like the call to adventure is always there.
Yeah.
And it made me think a little bit too. I mean, fire signs are they're dynamic embodiment. So there is this generosity of spirit that's there as well. And as I was saying to you before about Leos, and you said this, the emanating, they want to give, their love and what they experience. Remember, Leo is about being everything that they get to be and the drama of that. Where Sagittarius, they get to experience all this, so they distill it down into the knowledge and wisdom that then guides their life. The meaning of life comes through their own direct experience.
Okay.
So would Sagittarius be I experience or
Yes.
okay?
It's I experience or I believe.
What's Scorpio?
I desire.
I desire. Okay. I desire and I believe is Sagittarius.
Yeah, I believe because Sagittarius it is about imagination and belief, higher learning, higher knowledge.
Mm-hmm. It seems like understanding Sagittarius would be really important if this was your partner. If this was your romantic partner, because of the spontaneity, the call to adventure,
the need for freedom,
the need for
the lack of commitment,
experience, and everything like that. Like, if you didn't understand, you could maybe, depending on who you are and what your makeup is, this could be very confusing. Like, why doesn't this person want to stick around with me? Why do they want to go on solo trips? Why do they want to go, I could see how that could be in partnership, a rub if you weren't aware and celebrating it about them.
Absolutely. I mean, remember what I was teaching you about the signs next to each other. So imagine a Sagittarius and a Scorpio are in relation with each other, or a Sagittarius and a Capricorn. Sagittarius love their freedom. They love their freedom and they don't want to feel bogged down by planning. Right? I have to commit to like what I'm going to eat tonight for dinner. I don't want to commit to what I want to eat for. Somebody could call me and I could go out.
Yeah.
Right? Where Scorpio needs to know. It needs to know what we're eating for dinner today and in 1942. Right? So there is this conflict of interest, but it's also, remember, because we embody all the signs, it's also an opportunity for each of them to either expand or to ground.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yep.
Any underrated attributes, misconceptions?
Yes. Let's see. Misconceptions about Sagittarius being, not able to commit and not able to settle down. So long as they are pursuing something that is passionate, that is always growing beyond them, they can sit still.
Sure.
The other thing I think is great to know about Sagittarians, they're not super good with processing emotion. So they can be appear to be an unemotional sign. Let me say insensitive, because they're very emotional, like all fire signs. They're dramatic in their flair, but they don't process deeper emotion very well. And so they tend to, because they're all about learning the lesson, once they're moving through an emotionally challenging experience, and I mean, here's the moon in Sagittarius, emotional challenging experience, they tend to want to just move on. All right, great, got the lesson. I'm learning here about loss. I'm learning about grief, and I'm learning, I read a book on grieving, and I'm good. Let's move on. Right? Not digesting what's the sign before them, the most emotionally deep, intense, right? So Sagittarians need to learn how to root in their body and in their emotion.
Really good. Really good.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's
All
a
right.
really good
All
tip
right.
for the Sagittarians out there.
Capricorn, December 22nd through January 19th. I've got a little Capricorn in my life that I'm thinking of. But also Denzel Washington, Michelle Obama, Kate Middleton, Bradley Cooper, Lin-Manuel Miranda.
I have no idea who
I don't
that
know
is.
who that is either.
Me neither.
All right. Tell us about Capricorn.
First thing is it's cardinal. So that draws our attention that we are now at another one of those cross quarters, and this is the second solstice. This is the winter solstice here. So it is a cardinal earth sign. What have we learned about cardinal so far?
Fixed. Or no, cardinal is their starters. They lead. They
Yep.
Yeah.
They initiate.
They initiate.
That's the word.
And this is and they initiate. This is earth. So what do you think earth initiators are?
Well, I think stability, stable.
I was thinking material, like materiality and practicality rooted in, maybe like
facts.
fact and
like
mathematical.
Facts, business, things of the 3D.
Yeah.
I think of when I think of Capricorn.
Yeah. And so they're initiating, they're making things happen. That's the easiest way to say it. Things happen because of Capricorns. They are the most ambitious of all signs. So Capricorn is ruled by Saturn and is the opposite of Cancer. Okay. So here we have, remember, Cancer is our emotional mother that wants to nurture and be sure that's safe. So now we have the material side of that as the protector and the provider. So Capricorn is very much concerned with making things happen in the physical world, creating structure, right? Here's the infrastructure. These are the big CEOs. Unlike Aries that wants to just be the boss or the initiator of something, it's fire, right? They don't want to stick around. They want to do the ideas. They want to come in and lead some things, but then they want to go golf or, look for whales. Whereas Capricorn wants to see all the intricacies. Not only are they starting it from the ground up, but they are doing a systems check, right? So they're constantly managing reality, making it better, changing it, restructuring it. So there's a lot of pressure that Capricorns have to succeed, to accomplish. So again, think about our own human experience. We all are, like, we work. And right now we're doing the work, right? Whenever you use that word, doing the work, that's Capricorn purview.
Okay.
Capricorns can't get away from hard work. They embody the human experience of hard work, which means planning, which means strategy,
Oh my God.
which means restriction, which means rules, which means deadlines, which means time immemorial. So Capricorns know more than anybody else how to be efficient with time.
Totally. My little nephew is a Capricorn, and it's just like to a T.
Yeah.
Loves chores,
He would
To-do lists.
Yes.
to-do lists.
He's been working since he was like 3 years old by choice on the farm. Like, he will create work for himself instead of playing. And that feels like play
And we
to
call him
him
the rule maker because he's making the rules.
The safety
and
commissioner.
the safety
Safety
commissioner because he's always like, nope, you're not doing that right. It's just hilarious.
But I love perfect. That's so perfect. And I love what you just said about, like, he will make the work at the expense of play.
Yes.
Well, guess who plays? Right before him.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Oh, yeah, Sagittarius.
Totally. I was going to say that
Right?
Sagittarius
Yeah.
has to drive a Capricorn nuts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. Are you kidding
Yeah.
me? right? They drive each other nuts because there's work and play. And so these are these two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, that I alluded to before, that are considered our boundary planets. We need them to motivate and structure us. And so I think about, do you remember the fairy tale about the three little pigs and the big bad wolf?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So there's so much wisdom in that. And it describes these three little pigs, the way that we operate and function in the world. Like some of us are not concerned in the immediate about doing that. We'll put it off, right? But that one little Capricorn piggy was like, no, I have to fix the house up. I need to get it ready. I need to prepare it because at any point a big bad wolf could come. And at any point this can happen. You get it? They're kind of warriors, right? They're always planning for the worst case scenario. When they go to sleep at night, they're thinking about, that tree could fall on the house, these things that could happen.
Yeah.
And when the bad little wolf comes, guess who is the savior?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because he was ready or she was ready.
And always, right? And so this also describes the part of us that feels like we need to be ready to confront our fears. So insecurity is built into what it means to be a Capricorn, as is the fear of failure. So success and failure are the purview of Capricorn. And they have to exist between those two poles their whole life. Judging themselves, is this a success? Is this a failure? Right? Not getting into, like in the middle space, we talk about a healthy Capricorn is one that understands that you work so you can play.
Yeah.
You learn the rules so that you can go your own way.
Right.
Right? You do all the background checks so you can relax.
Sure.
Yeah, it's so interesting too, because our nephew that we've been talking about, he has a hard time being silly. He doesn't really like get the silliness. And he's like 7, he's a little kid. And he hates when he's around people that are singing. He doesn't like singing. And it makes him very uncomfortable. And he won't sing himself. Like, I've never heard him sing or anything. And when his mom's like singing, he's like, Mom, stop. And he plugs his ears. It's so interesting because that's freedom, that's play, that could be silliness. And it's something about it makes him uncomfortable.
Yeah, and out of control.
Yeah.
Capricorns need to be sure that everything is always manageable. So they are the little kids that never got to be little kids. And they are the ones that need the inner child work more than anybody else.
So
Totally. And that's a good comment to make for these signs as we discuss them. Like, is the work for a lot of these signs that have, an innate tendency towards a particular behavioral pattern, is the real medicine for them and the work for them to spend time in its opposite? Like, where are you, quote unquote, weak or afraid to exist and to spend time in that space? Or is it like, fuck that doesn't work for me, I'm just going to lean into my successful traits or whatever?
Yeah, no, and that's the balance that we're talking about this axis point, right? So if we used this one and we said that Cancer is the medicine, or in this case, we might also use that Capricorn is overdeveloped, right? And so how do I lean into what is underdeveloped in myself? And here again, we have the emotional realm of Cancer and the moon, which is about trust. Capricorn, it's trust with the, I did lock the doors. I always lock the door. So I trust that my kid is going to be okay in the house, right? They've done their due diligence to trust, but that could be overdeveloped where they feel like they can never just lean into trust until they do the work.
Totally. It sounds like someone who would have a tendency towards like obsessive compulsiveness.
Totally.
Because they're like, I've crafted the system that needs to be executed in order for, this existence to happen. And if we don't, left to right, top to bottom, hit the bell, sign off here, it's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other things we'll mention about them too is they're also very critical, and they need to be very critical, right? They're making very important decisions, but they tend to criticize themselves. So they look for things like Virgos that are wrong so they can fix it. They feel really good about themselves when they have created a new structure. When they've solved a problem in some way.
Yeah.
So they tend to go looking for problems. And it's exactly what you just said, Mimi. They create more work for themselves. Because if you're not being productive, and that's the key word for Capricorn, if you're not being productive, who am I?
Yeah, totally.
It seems like they might have a hard time accessing deep emotions within, or that emotions, they're like, a little frightful. It's it's unknown. It's not reliable.
And it's unproductive. And it's inefficient.
Yeah.
And how's it going to help get the problem solved? Yeah, very much so. So they compartmentalize them. They're an earth sign, so they still have to feel them.
Yeah.
But the projection then, like Cancer, is instead, they're the proud one that's always in control, never let anybody see them cry. But they go home and they have to take care of their, very sensitive husband and their very sensitive children, right? So all of the sensitivity gets projected outside, and they then feel like they have to hold for everyone.
Totally.
Interesting.
Totally. I would imagine. So we're talking about, misunderstandings or labels even. I think a Capricorn can sometimes get like, they're a little stiff.
They are.
Like, oh, they're not very much fun.
No.
And so is that a misconception, or is that like, it's kind of great?
I mean, it's a hard one. It is not a misconception because they are ruled by Saturn, and their sense of humor is they're the driest sense of humor.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, I mean, they're the ones that give you the zingers that you're like days later.
Like the roasters.
Yeah.
Like the professional roasters,
Sure.
I bet,
Right.
are pretty good.
Or just days later, you're like, was that a comp? What do they really mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, they get that reputation, but they themselves struggle with feeling like they can't be fun. They themselves struggle with feeling like they can feel free to be themselves. And so, yeah, there is some truth to that, but it doesn't mean that they can't be.
Right.
Some of the funnest. There you go. Correct that one, Capricorn. The funnest people I know are Capricorns because they've learned not to take themselves so seriously.
Sure. Like there's an attribute of like, I'm going to build the system and the structure to get me out of this lack of fun characteristic that I have, such that I can at least, step into the domain of fun and feel safe enough to experience it.
Totally.
Very good. All right. Aquarius, January 20th through February 18th. We've got Oprah Winfrey, Justin Timberlake, Ellen DeGeneres, Shakira, and good old Abraham Lincoln as our most popular Aquarius. Tell us about Aquarius.
All right. Well, here we have a fixed air sign. And this fixed air sign is the opposite of Leo. So here in Aquarius, and the Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. So this is also an outer planet. Aquarians, we talked before about, the intellect. They are the mind. They are the intellect, the higher mind. We have our personal minds, which are ruled by Mercury. This is how we're thinking and processing information. But Aquarius is the universal mind. And so Aquarians are the ones that are where we get that expression being in your head. Those Aquarians, they live in their head because they are so intellectual. They're constantly thinking and trying to create a reality out of an ideal. So in other words, Aquarians are very much motivated by the ideal, the way that things should be. They are more of a humanistic or a society-based sign.
Like a humanitarian.
Yes, they care more about the whole than they do the individual pieces.
Think of Oprah Winfrey's
Exactly.
entire purpose is this sort of this branded humanitarian effort to make people or support people in being better.
And that's a great example. Ellen DeGeneres is also good in that way. And both of them, what they're doing, and this is why Aquarius is so important, is they're taking concepts, they're taking paradigms, they're taking things that we, know as a body of knowledge, and they're upgrading it, they're challenging it, they're turning it on its side, right? And so knowledge through Aquarius becomes about progression. It becomes about change. It becomes about revolution. Aquarius wants to break out of the stodginess of Capricorn, right? Of what was, if it's no longer fulfilling the needs of the whole. Now, this is an interesting piece of Aquarius because they were ruled by Capricorn before Uranus was discovered. So they do have this structure component to it because Aquarians are also known as the free spirits and the eccentrics, unconventional, the weirdos of the zodiac.
Yeah, founder of Organifi, Drew Canoli. Love him.
Right. And they are the weirdos of the zodiac because they are receiving channeled information from the aliens, from the divine, from other, nebulas. And, I say that half jokingly, but not. Who are we to argue that they know these things that they claim to know, right? They're genius. Aquarius is genius. And they're the crazies walking down the street talking, like telling you they're Oprah. Right. And it's important important again that this is, I'm not criticizing. We need to recognize that as we are moving through these signs, especially the ones that are ruled by the outer planets, they have this more collective dimension to them. Okay. So coming back to the Aquarius in a day-to-day, they need to feel stimulated. They get bored very, very easily. And they're interested in concepts, big concepts, universal concepts. And for them, they see the big picture. They are often in the big picture and they talk above our heads a lot of times. And/or remember, I promised you we come back to them as the perfectionists because they have the ideal of a utopia.
Yes.
And because they believe so heavily in this utopia, it's hard for them to live in reality.
Yeah, you're nailing the Aquarius individuals that I know in my life. What I've seen in a couple cases as these folks, let's say they're not at the Oprah level, but they do have such a compelling articulation of this utopia that they actually gather a following. And sometimes that following actually support, like where they just want to stay high level, that following may support some of the logistics in order to support their vision or their humanitarian effort. And so they almost naturally accumulate like a support team. Is that making any sense?
You're so good.
Oh, good.
You're so good. I love it. Yes. Okay. So Aquarius and Uranus is also the sign of community and friends.
Okay.
So the gathering, Aquarius is the gathering. Aquarius is the community. Aquarius is the tribe. And Aquarius wants to endorse the cause, right? The revolution. And so they are the mouthpiece of that, so to speak, or the architect of that.
Yeah.
But then through this charisma that they have and through their intellect, which is, Abraham Lincoln,
right.
He was a diplomat in all of this. They are able to call and attract a following, cult leaders.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And in that, then the group, the community becomes the cause, right?
Right.
This is how revolutions happen, right? It is the ones that are repressed that have to rise up collectively to override the power at hand.
Yeah.
And this is so exciting when we move into our next episode with Pluto and Aquarius. So Aquarius also, they are connected to technology. So their minds think in this very scientific and techie sort of way. However, they're also the weird metaphysicalists as well that believe in the aliens. So my favorite thing with Aquarians is often like, they know stuff. And it's like, I have to gauge whether they're, a weirdo or a scientist. But if they're, a scientist, and I may say to them, wow, you get all this information and you sometimes don't even know how you get it. And for the scientists, they don't want to acknowledge intuition.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. And
right.
for, the one that is like, I'm just downloading all the time. Then when they go learn, because education helps refine the mind, they find that it's so easy to learn this because it's just remembering what has already been downloaded.
Totally. Drew Canoli, founder of Organifi, is one of the most uniquely intelligent people I've ever met in my life.
Unique is a good word.
Not in the traditional sense.
Very good.
But that man can read a book and never look at it ever again and be able to recite what he read. And I think it's because it's illuminated a knowing that is deep within him, such that he is able to what will feel like recall from reading a book, but it's more along the lines of just giving him a vehicle through language to express what he's already felt.
You're getting me so excited right now. You woke me up from my carb slump. So again, he's able to read a book and hold the knowledge because remember we were talking about air and air being all over the place. This is fixed air. So just like your fixed fire, Mimi, that fire that can be all over the place. And you were talking about, no, I'm able to focus and stay passionate with something that I love. Air signs can focus like no other and read a book and recall.
Yep.
So it is this amazing ability that they have. Equally, they're all over the place. They can't keep they don't know where their keys are. They don't remember what they ate for dinner. They don't know if their socks match because they're not always in their body. And that's part of the problem. Aquarians live in their head, and they live in their head so much that at the end of the day, they're so tired, like they just ran 25 miles. And they did whatever they've been thinking about in their head, sometimes at the expense of actually ever manifesting it in real life. So they're dreamers.
Yeah, I definitely feel that with my brother. CJ is an Aquarius, and I've always said somehow he should be like a professional arguer. He could have easily been like,
they're called lawyers.
Right. That's what I mean. I was just going to say he could have easily been a high-powered attorney, because even if you are 100% confident in your position, in your beliefs, in what you know to be true for even something you've experienced. I'm speaking from specific experiences in my life now. I can talk to my brother, and he, even though I'm 100% confident in what I believe or what I know or what I experience, he can argue in such a way where I start to very much doubt,
second guess yourself,
doubt my own lived experience.
Yeah.
And it's like a superpower for him. And
well, it's also your opposite though, honey. And that's where, again, like this is, there is Leo and there's Aquarius.
Yeah.
And what Aquarians get so, upset about, critical about with Leos is that Leos want to make it all about themselves. It's not all about you and your direct experience. It's about us. It's about the we, it's about history. It's about science. It's about all of these things. And so they will make anybody doubt, but they're not arguing from a place that's subjective. They're arguing from an objective place, right? Which only creates paradigms. And that's an ideal. We don't live in science, right? Science can only measure so much. But Aquarians, this is why they're the perfectionists. They always think they're right.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. So, so Aquarius and Virgo, not a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I've ever heard my brother say, you know what, that's a good point. I'm going to think on that.
Yes.
I just never.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really good.
He always has a snappy comeback.
You say it to him and start to disarm him.
As far as any misunderstandings we might have about Aquarius or anything that's underrated that we haven't talked about.
Yeah. One of the misunderstandings about Aquarius, because they are an air sign, is that they're cold, and they are cold. They can be cool and they could be aloof, but it doesn't mean that they're not sensitive. Actually, Aquarians are very sensitive, and Aquarians tend to cry a lot. And it's not crying necessarily in the way that a water sign, it would be that their systems, because they're highly, there's so much energy, their electricity, they have anxiety in that way. Their system needs to discharge through crying and tears. So their sensitivity, they pick up on everything around them in this realm and in others. And we often can perceive Aquarians as being standoffish or aloof, but oftentimes they are just so internal because they're trying to ground themselves in about 16 different, universes.
Right.
So they are emotional, they can connect.
Totally.
That's one of those.
Really good. Cool. Okay, we are wrapping up. This is the 12th sign, and we are on Pisces. February 19th through March 20th. We've got Rihanna. We've got the very famous Albert Einstein, Steve Jobs, Kurt Cobain, and Bruce Lee. Wow, what an interesting collection of characters.
What an interesting collection of characters. That is such a wonderful illustration of Pisces, because you've heard me before, when we come to Pisces, I don't fucking know. I don't know. You tell me, Pisces. Okay, so Pisces is a water sign, and it's mutable. And so already there, water and mutable, doesn't it sound like the same thing? Right? So it's watery and it's mutable. Where are they going? Where are they coming? They're, depicted by two fish swimming in opposite directions. The opposite of Pisces is Virgo. And so here we have the wateriest dimension of all of our zodiac. And I think that it would be good to actually use some of the list of people that you have there to sort of describe the chameleon-like Pisces energy, because ultimately that's what Pisces is. Pisces is a mix of everything preceding and everything that will ever be. It is the archetypal soup in which we come from and return to. Okay. So characteristic wise, first one on there was who?
Rihanna.
Okay, so I want you to imagine right now, if you know what Rihanna looks like, close your eyes and see her big old dreamy eyes. There's Pisces. Now feel her. Whatever it is she's singing, you feel her. You feel every experience. Pisces are compassionate. They are empathy. They are the feelers of everything. And so they sense into and they take on the environment around them. And equally so, they will make you feel.
Think about Kurt Cobain and Nirvana, right? Like what a transcendent musical experience to listen to Nirvana's music.
Andrea is a Pisces. Both of my sisters, or two of my sisters, are Pisces. And Andrea is a world-class photographer, amazing, and she feels so deep, and she wears her emotions on her sleeve at all times, whether they're good, bad, negative, positive, anything. Like she cannot fake. She has a really hard time. You know, when you open a gift from someone that you don't really like, but we can all like put on a smiley face, like, oh, thank you, that was so generous. My sister does not have that ability, because she wears her emotions and her feelings so close to her surface that if she doesn't like a gift, she cannot fake it.
But the thing is she's not wearing anything. She is that.
Yes.
So of all the emotions, that's what Pisces is. They are the array of that. And so they trigger that in others as well. You said something a minute ago, though, transcendent. So the planet that rules Pisces is Neptune. And prior to Neptune, it was Jupiter. But the function, the force of this collective archetype is transcendence. And so Pisces have a really hard time living in reality, because reality is harsh and reality has rules and deadlines and times, where Pisces, and I mean the energy of the transcendent is living in all of it, right? It's in our imagination. So Pisces are incredibly imaginative, and they are artists in that way.
Creative.
And what they create conveys emotion, and it will convey the emotion of the time, either collectively, like your artist person that you enjoy, or it embodies the emotion of their time. So oftentimes when I'm working with people that are not super verbal, like in other words, they're not going to articulate their emotions, I ask them to do projects. And those projects over time will reflect something that I can interpret. See, Virgo creates order out of the chaos of Pisces. Right. So here in this way, it can be hard. Pisces feel very overwhelmed by their experience. And as a result, I'm going to throw in part of the misnomer. Pisces are not emotional wrecks all the time. And they can be incredibly organized, even rigid. And imagine that if you are constantly living in this ever-changing environment and you never know how you feel from one day to the next. Can you imagine how challenging that would be?
Right.
Yeah.
Especially living in a listen to this, we're living in a relational world where much of you is dependent upon the container of that relationship. So not only do they equally crave relationships and a container to help them understand their own consistency, but they also don't want that container, because then it's that container. Is it me or is it them? They don't know themselves. So Pisces have to learn boundaries. They are the opposite of boundaries.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So what do you think about a Pisces romantic partnership?
Oh, geez. It could be perfect bliss. It could be so they would need to connect over something that they really, really love and adore. Right. And that might be their child. That might be their dog. That might be something. Because if they don't have something that they're both loving and nurturing together, then they're going to feel unseen by the other. And that's when they go into fantasy. So how did Kurt Cobain go?
Interesting. Yeah, he committed suicide.
Why?
Escape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Escape the harshness of this reality.
Yeah.
Right. And he lived in an ideal. And this is important, because Pisces are this analogous, that's not the right word.
Amalgamous.
Thank you. Amalgamous being, this amorphous being, they are so easy to be projected upon.
Sure. From what I know about these 5 characters, at least 3 of them, Rihanna, Steve Jobs, Kurt Cobain, have at least publicly had relationship issues. And they might look a little bit different for each, but like Steve Jobs is notoriously very difficult to work for. And Kurt Cobain obviously had a sort of mainstream relationship with, I'm forgetting her name, Courtney Love or something.
Yes.
And then Rihanna with Chris Brown, and they were all tragic,
Abusive.
and Steve Jobs arguably with his employees, some would say that it crossed the line. Is there anything about Pisces that would be indicative of this type of behavior?
What was the last statement you said? Cross the line?
Yeah.
I just told you that they don't have lines.
That's right. Yeah.
So they don't have boundaries.
Yeah.
And so they have to learn boundaries. And boundaries are relative to each experience.
Yeah.
Right. And the first boundary, though, is the boundary of self. I am a self, right? And if you think about it, what comes next after Pisces?
Aries.
And so we move from, this is the womb state before birth, where you're still fused with another being and your survival is dependent upon the relationship. And then you're thrust into the world and you're all by yourself. So yes, Pisces craves merging and reconnecting and moving back into the divine. And they have a hard time knowing who they are.
Sure.
And so they'll overcompensate and have such a strong identity.
Yeah.
Right. But then they don't do well in relationships.
Interesting.
Now go to Albert Einstein, because here we see Pisces at its finest in terms of, again, its genius. And he has so many great quotes about imagination and how imagination and reason are merely the opposites of one another. Right. So he so very well embodies this universal wisdom that is given through Pisces. Pisces has access. Remember, I said Aquarius has access to the universal mind, but Pisces has access to the universal wisdom of experience, right? The emotions, the way that we have processed our life and who we are as a result of our own humanity. That's what Pisces is tapped into. And so Albert Einstein was such a channel, and he was able to just like channel this wisdom through him as a vehicle without over identifying with it.
Totally.
We made him famous, but he was merely a young Jewish man.
Totally. There's almost, and I don't know much about him, but there was almost like this intentional arm's lengthening of himself from his work in the way that he spoke about his work that is a lot different from like very famous people who are almost like excited to identify with the things that they've created.
Yeah.
Really cool. Okay. Anything about Pisces that we, don't often look at enough or maybe pay too much attention to? Where can we debunk any myths for Pisces?
I mean, these water signs, I want to say that I'm sorry we didn't give these as much as they deserve. We'll do that at another time. There's so much mystery to them. So one of the things I would say about Pisces, they are analytical. Like a lot of times people think that, Pisces are like the biggest airheads of all because they live in the clouds. But no, they are so discerning of their experiences. They just have a different metric in which to discern. So we need to give them that. And I think the other thing that Pisces also get the bad rap of being overly sensitive. And we as a society do not value the importance of sensitivity and emotion and empathy. And so as a result, they carry the burden of our own emotional illiteracy.
Great.
Interesting.
That's really...
Wow. I'm just like, I'm just sitting here and like, through each one of these signs, I'm thinking about a relationship that I have with someone in my family or a friend or Chase or whatever. And I'm like, it just is, so much of it makes sense. It's coming back to like, oh, I don't really believe in astrology. Well, it believes in you. It's running through your fabric, whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not. And it's just illuminating so much of my own life and experience in relationship with other people. And this is what I mean, coming full circle all the way back to episode 1 when we started this. It's like our intention in going through this is so that when people are listening to you speak, they're applying it to their own relationships and seeing the world through the eyes of that sign that they might know. And man, it's just so illuminating. It's just fascinating.
Yeah,
to me.
we're mapping the people terrain of our life experience. And, even in I'll speak for myself, relatively shallow understanding of astrology, there are places on the map that I've been or interacted with. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I was trying to drive a car through mud there. I did not have the right set of tires. Now that I know about this environment, that it's quite muddy, I would approach this relationship with different tools in my tool belt such that I can, properly navigate this landscape. And others, there's just spaces I've never been before. And we're describing what it's like to drive up a mountain road. And it's like, wow, I haven't been on a mountain road before, but now that I'm aware of what the terrain looks like, I'm going to be able to have a little more understanding as it pertains to having a successful trip through mountain road.
And I think what you're saying there, which is, it's perfect for the last sign, is you were talking about having empathy. Yeah. Right? We're just talking about having empathy, and empathy requires that we feel, right? Like the relating, we started with this with Libra, and Libra's an air sign, and Libra wants to relate. It wants to relate so that it can file away that information and knowledge and go later and go remember the name of that person's child so that it can relate and make that connection, and we're all good. But Pisces, it feels. It doesn't even have a choice. It feels the other's experience, right? And so if you come to lunch with a Pisces after something terrible just happened and you try and say, no, it's good. They're going to have indigestion and go home and not be able to, digest their meal and not know why, right? They can't help but feel. And that's what we're doing here. Astrology gives us this map so that we can move back into a state of oneness. And Pisces is that state of oneness. It's the unification of all. Yeah. And we are so quick to separate ourselves from others and point out how we are different that instead we need to remember that we are all similar and that those differences are just the unique expressions and talents that we have here. And Pisces is a conglomeration of all of those.
Totally.
Interesting.
So good. Okay, recapping what we talked about today, because I think we hit some of these I statements. We hit them on a few, but just to recap, Libra is I relate.
Yes.
Scorpio is I
desire.
Desire, that's right.
I desire and I believe.
Sagittarius is I experience.
I experience or I believe.
Capricorn.
I don't think we touched on Capricorn.
Yeah, I don't think I got
Capricorn. I don't think we did touch on Capricorn.
I produce.
It is. I was going to say I manage, but it is I produce.
Very good. Aquarius.
I know.
And Pisces, I feel.
Yeah, all of it.
Great.
And on that note, since we're going to end, and I want to bring this back to the seasonal aspect of it.
Yeah.
So we are currently in the very last 7-8 days of Pisces season. And so think about this conceptually now, how we just moved through all of the signs as qualities of a person, but they are also experiences of seasons.
Okay.
And in this mutable is always going to be the end of a season. And here we are at the end of our winter season when we all should have been resting and restoring and reflecting in the darkness and shedding all these old parts. And here we are with Pisces getting ready to jump into the new and be rebirthed and renewal. And in these last final moments, what Pisces is doing is it's almost as if it's separated itself in all these pieces. And now it's coming back together. Right? Think about what life is. It's just the splitting of cells.
Sure.
And the reconvening of cells. So as we move out of the dark time of the year, and I mean that in the best sense, the restful time of the year, we look at ourselves and we come back into this place of completion. What am I going to grow in this next iteration of I am? What quality in me do I love or did I learn through the last year of my life, even if I didn't want to learn it? And how am I going to embody that in the season of Aries?
Great. Great. And that is at March 12th that we are talking here. I would imagine when folks are listening to this is somewhere around the second or third week of May. So they hopefully have been stepping into that. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Guys, we've got one more of our 4-part astrology series dropping next Monday, so stay tuned. We'll be putting a nice bow on these 3 episodes and also zooming out a little bit to talk about the macro and the tides, if you will, of the collective that we can at least get a sense of, such that we can orient to work with the current, if you will.
Yep.
And to the listeners, if anything in here resonated or landed with you, or just you thought it was funny or interesting or whatever, send it to someone you love. Send it to a friend that maybe is a Sagittarius or a Scorpio or a Capricorn or whatever, and you can open the door and have that fun conversation, and it also just helps us spread this good information. And we appreciate every share and every review, comment. We would love to hear your guys' comments on YouTube. If we missed something, or if you have input or opinion or ideas or whatever, we would love to hear from you guys. We'll talk to you next time. Go spread some light. Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for listening.
If you enjoyed that, check out right over here for some more fun clips.
Oh, and you're going to want to subscribe.
Bye.